Well, the last 3 days have made it pretty obvious that impeachment is not about what they say it's about. Fundamentally, it's a policy disagreement between permanent Washington and the elected president. Douglas Macgregor is a retired U.S. Army colonel and author of the book Margin of Victory, joins us tonight. So please put, in the way that you do better than anyone I know, Ukraine into some context for us. We should care about Ukraine's sniping with Russia, because why?
Well, first, may I say one thing?
Yes.
You never publicize private conversations between heads of state. You don't do it.
Yes.
And now we know why. Because they are widely misinterpreted, twisted, not understood, and they create bad relations between the two states. If we were to publicize all the private conversations between JFK and Khrushchev, or between Eisenhower and Khrushchev, between any of the heads of state over the last 30 or 40 years, they would probably be devastating in their content to most people.
So
people would not
that's such
understand
a good point. So why are we doing this?
Well, you know, you heard Louis Gohmert talk about the man who is not a whistleblower at all, who is actually has a very checkered past that I think will come out over the next few weeks. I think you're going to hear a lot from the Pfizer report when that is published that will clarify some of the points that Louis just made. And we'll discover this is another, broadly speaking, soft coup, an attempt to remove the president of the United States yet again. If you can't remove him, at least damage him in some way between now and the election. So I think that's very important to understand up front. Now, I've got to hand it to the Democrats, because this was beautifully stage-managed performance by Yovanovitch. This is a Christ-like figure,
yes,
who is being crucified by the satanic man in the White House.
Yes.
And that was the game that was played. And what we got out of it was he didn't commit any crimes. He hasn't done anything wrong, not at least as far as Yovanovitch knows, but she's very unhappy that she was removed from office.
Yeah, well, that's kind of the crux of it here. He hurt her feelings. She was really clear about that, all right? So I was watching CNN and MSNBC today, and I learned that's a crime. Like, you can't do that. She's a U.S. ambassador. You can't criticize her.
Well, as far as Ukraine is concerned, the people that preceded Donald Trump in office have been absolutely insistent from day one that Ukraine must become part of NATO. And the reason for the invasion of Crimea was the conviction in Moscow that this was going to happen. And that then would become, that is, Crimea would become a base for NATO from which it could project power against Russia. That never comes up for discussion, but that's a very real concern.
Why would we ever do something like, why would we do that?
Why did we bring in Macedonia? Why have we brought in Bulgaria? I mean, you've got to ask the question.
There are people at the State Department pushing the United States to war against Russia.
Well, they don't think they're pushing it towards war because they don't think the Russians will go to war. And that's where I think they're wrong. I think there is a red line out there, and we're very close to it. And the Russians, whether we like it or not, are probably more paranoid than the left in the United States.
Yes.
And they are quite capable of striking back at us. Hopefully not on the nuclear level, but it's real. And this is another reason why this whole Ukraine business needs to be treated differently. The first thing we should announce is Ukraine is not going to be a member of NATO.
Yeah.
We want to facilitate a solution. Let's sit down and find a solution that will work for both the Russians and the Ukrainians. And I think that's what Zelensky, the new president, really wants.
It's all so crazy. Thank you very much.
Sure.